Captain Sarah Mitchell strode across the military airfield, holding her chin high despite the whispers and snickers trailing behind her. The other pilots clustered around the gleaming new F-35 fighters, their voices drifting across the concrete as they cracked jokes about her plane. "Check out that ancient hunk of metal," Lieutenant Davis said, gesturing towards Sarah's jet. "How did she even get clearance to fly that dinosaur?" Sarah's plane looked nothing like the smooth, modern fighters surrounding it. The paint had faded and worn away, covered with bizarre markings nobody could identify. Its shape was unusual too, with weird angles and surfaces that seemed to swallow light instead of bouncing it back. To everyone watching, it looked like leftover junk from some failed experiment. Someone said they dragged it out of storage from a secret project that got canceled ages ago. Another pilot muttered, "Why would they stick Mitchell with that rust bucket when she's supposed to be part of the elite squadron?" Sarah had spent 15 years earning her spot in the Air Force's most respected unit. She'd finished first in her class at the Air Force Academy, aced advanced flight training with perfect marks, and completed 2 tours of duty overseas. Her record was flawless. Her flying skills were unmatched. Yet here she stood, listening to her colleagues mock the plane she'd been given. The assignment came straight from General Harrison himself. Sarah remembered sitting in his office 3 weeks earlier when he slid a classified folder across the desk containing her new mission detail. The general's face was dead serious as he told her she'd be flying a special plane, one that very few people knew about. "This isn't like anything you've flown before, Captain," the general had said. "The program has been classified for more than 10 years. What I'm about to reveal cannot leave this room." Sarah signed more confidentiality agreements that day than in her entire military career combined. The general took her to a restricted hangar on the far edge of the base, one that needed special clearance just to get near. Inside sat the strangest plane she'd ever laid eyes on. "Meet the Ghosthawk," General Harrison had said with clear pride. "She may not look impressive, but this plane represents 20 years of cutting-edge military research." The jet before her looked unlike anything Sarah had seen in any military manual or aviation magazine. The design was completely one of a kind, with curves and angles that seemed to break conventional aircraft engineering rules. The cockpit was bigger than normal fighters, packed with displays and controls that looked more like from a sci-fi film than a military jet. "Sir, what exactly am I supposed to do with this?" Sarah had asked, trying to mask her confusion. General Harrison smiled. "You're going to prove that sometimes the most powerful weapons are the ones nobody expects." Now, 3 weeks later, Sarah was living with the daily humiliation of flying what everyone thought was an outdated failure. The other pilots had nicknamed her jet the Flying Junker and placed bets on when it would finally break down for good. Some even whispered that her assignment to fly it was punishment for some hidden mistake she'd made. Major Thompson, the squadron leader, walked up to Sarah as she got ready for the morning briefing. He was a skilled pilot and generally fair-minded, but even he seemed puzzled by her situation. "Mitchell, I have to ask," he said quietly. "What did you do to get stuck with that thing? I've put in 3 requests to get you reassigned to a proper plane, but they keep getting denied at the highest levels." Sarah appreciated his concern, but she couldn't tell him the truth. "I'm just following orders, sir. The plane may look different, but it flies." "Different is one way to put it," Thompson replied. "Look, I know your record. You're one of the best pilots I've ever worked with. If you need me to speak to someone higher up, I will. No pilot of your skills should be flying museum pieces." The morning briefing was especially tough. While the pilots discussed their aircraft specs and abilities, Sarah had to sit quietly while others made jokes about her mystery machine. The mission they received was a routine patrol flight over international waters, the kind of exercise they'd done hundreds of times before. "Mitchell, try to keep up with the real planes," Lieutenant Rodriguez called out as they headed to their aircraft. The comment sparked laughter from several other pilots. Sarah climbed into the Ghosthawk's cockpit and started her pre-flight check. The systems were unlike anything she'd trained on, but after 3 weeks of intense study, she was starting to understand the plane's unique abilities. The displays showed information that conventional fighters couldn't access, and the flight controls responded with a precision that amazed her every time she flew. As she fired up the engines, Sarah noticed the odd quietness surrounding her plane. Most jets roared to life with enormous noise, but the Ghosthawk hummed softly, almost silently. The other pilots were too focused on their own preparations to notice, but Sarah was beginning to realize that everything about her plane was designed to be different. The tower cleared them for takeoff, and one by one the squadron lifted off into the clear morning sky. Sarah's jet rose smoothly, its flight characteristics unlike any plane she'd ever piloted. The Ghosthawk felt alive beneath her hands, responding to her thoughts as much as her control. As they formed up for their patrol route, Sarah could hear the radio chatter from her squadron mates. They were still joking about her plane, wondering aloud how long it would take before she'd request an emergency landing when her antique inevitably broke down. What none of them knew was that Captain Sarah Mitchell was about to discover exactly why the Ghosthawk had been kept secret for so many years, and why General Harrison had chosen her specifically to be its pilot. The real test was just beginning. 30 minutes into their routine patrol, everything shifted. Sarah was flying in formation with 5 other jets when her radar screen suddenly blazed with contacts that shouldn't have been there. Multiple aircraft were closing in from the north, moving fast and flying in a pattern that screamed hostile intent. "Control, this is Eagle Squadron." Major Thompson's voice came through the radio. "We have unknown aircraft approaching Sector 7. Please advise." The response from air traffic control was immediate and tense. "Eagle Squadron, those contacts are not showing on our radar. Repeat, we have no aircraft in your vicinity." Sarah looked at her own displays and felt a chill crawl down her spine. While her squadron mates were seeing basic radar contacts, the Ghosthawk's advanced sensors were showing her much more detailed information. The approaching aircraft were definitely military jets, but they weren't broadcasting any identification signals, and their configuration suggested they were armed for combat. "Control, Eagle Leader," Thompson called again. "We definitely have 6 bogies inbound. They appear to be military aircraft, and they're not responding to radio contact." Lieutenant Davis's voice crackled through the comm. "I'm not picking up anything on radar, Thompson. Are you sure about this?" Sarah watched her screens as the Ghosthawk systems automatically began gathering intelligence on the approaching aircraft. The technology was remarkable. Her displays showed not just the position and speed of the unknown jets, but also their exact aircraft type, weapons loadout, and even details about their electronic systems. This was far beyond anything she'd seen in conventional fighter jets. "Eagle Squadron, this is Control," the radio crackled. "We're scrambling additional aircraft to your position. You are authorized to investigate the contacts, but do not engage unless fired upon." The 6 unknown aircraft were now clearly visible on the horizon, and Sarah could see that they weren't from any friendly nation. The Ghosthawk's computer systems had identified them as advanced fighters from a country that was definitely not supposed to be operating in this airspace. Even more troubling, her sensors indicated that these jets were carrying live weapons and were preparing for combat operations. "This is Eagle Leader," Thompson transmitted. "Unknown aircraft, you are in restricted airspace. Identify yourselves immediately and alter course." There was no response. The foreign jets continued their approach, and Sarah could see on her displays that they were spreading out into attack formation. Her training told her that this was about to become a combat situation, but she was flying what everyone believed was an obsolete plane that couldn't possibly compete with modern fighters. "Eagle Squadron, bandits are not responding," Thompson called to his pilot. "Prepare for defensive maneuvers." Sarah felt her heart pounding as the enemy aircraft moved closer. On her advanced displays, she could see that the hostile jets had locked their weapon systems onto her squadron mate. The situation was about to turn deadly, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. That's when something extraordinary happened. As Sarah watched her screen, the Ghosthawk systems began activating features she hadn't even known existed. Warning lights flashed across her cockpit as the plane's computer announced in a calm female voice, "Stealth mode engaged. Electronic countermeasures online. Defensive systems active." Suddenly, Sarah understood why the Ghosthawk looked so strange and why it had been kept secret for so many years. This wasn't an old, outdated plane at all. It was the most advanced military technology ever created, designed to be invisible to enemy radar and equipped with abilities that no other fighter possessed. "Control, this is Eagle Leader," Thompson's voice was getting more urgent. "The bogies have weapons lock. We need backup now." Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She broke radio silence and spoke directly to her squadron leader. "Eagle Leader, this is Mitchell. I'm moving to intercept." "Mitchell, negative," Thompson shouted back. "You're flying a museum piece. Get clear of the combat zone immediately." But Sarah was no longer listening to her squadron leader. The Ghosthawk systems were showing her exactly what needed to be done, and for the first time since she'd started flying this plane, she understood her true mission. She wasn't just another pilot in the squadron. She was the secret weapon that nobody was supposed to see coming. As she pushed the Ghosthawk's throttles forward, Sarah felt the plane respond with power she never could have imagined. The jet accelerated like nothing she'd ever flown, moving faster than should have been possible while remaining completely silent. Her radar signature vanished as the stealth systems engaged, making her invisible to both friendly and enemy sensors. "Where did Mitchell go?" she heard Lieutenant Davis ask over the radio. "She just disappeared from my scope. The enemy aircraft were now close enough to engage, and Sarah could see on her displays that they were preparing to fire missiles at her squadron mate. Major Thompson and the others were flying standard military aircraft that, while excellent, were no match for the advanced foreign fighters they were facing. Without intervention, some of her friends were about to die. Sarah had been trained for years on conventional aircraft, but nothing had prepared her for what the Ghosthawk could do. As she approached the enemy formation, her plane's systems began targeting all 6 hostile jets simultaneously. The technology was so advanced that it could track and engage multiple targets while remaining completely undetected. "This is Eagle Leader to all aircraft." Thompson's voice was tight with concentration. "Bandits are preparing to fire. Evasive maneuvers now." The enemy jets launched their missiles just as Sarah arrived in the combat zone. What happened next would be discussed in military circles for years to come, though the full truth would remain classified at the highest level. The Ghosthawk proved that some weapons are indeed most effective when nobody sees them coming. Sarah's fingers moved across controls that responded to her commands with deadly precision. This was the moment she had been unknowingly training for her entire career, and the moment when the Ghosthawk would finally reveal its true purpose to the world. The missiles launched by the enemy aircraft never reached their target. As Sarah watched in amazement, the Ghosthawk's defensive systems activated automatically, deploying countermeasures she didn't even know existed. Invisible energy beams shot out from her plane, disrupting the guidance systems of the incoming missiles and causing them to veer off harmlessly into empty sky. "What the hell just happened?" Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came through the radio, filled with confusion. "Those missiles just went crazy and missed everything." Major Thompson was equally baffled. "Control, this is Eagle Leader. The enemy missiles malfunctioned. All targets missed. We're still in formation and ready for combat." Sarah knew the truth, but she couldn't reveal it over open radio channels. The Ghosthawk had saved her squadron without any of them realizing how. The enemy pilots were just as confused as her squadron mates, trying to understand why their advanced missiles had failed to hit such easy targets. Now it was Sarah's turn to take action. The Ghosthawk's targeting systems had locked onto all 6 enemy aircraft, and her displays showed her exactly how to engage them. But instead of destroying the hostile jets, her orders were different. General Harrison had been very specific during her classified briefing. The Ghosthawk's mission was to neutralize threats while gathering intelligence. Sarah activated the plane's electronic warfare systems, and suddenly the enemy jets found themselves in serious trouble. Their radar screens went blank, their communication systems failed, and their navigation equipment began showing false readings. Within seconds, the advanced foreign fighters were flying blind, unable to see where they were going or communicate with each other. "Eagle Squadron, this is Control," the radio crackled. "Are you seeing this? The bogies appear to be having some kind of system failure." Major Thompson watched in amazement as the enemy aircraft began flying erratic patterns, clearly struggling with equipment malfunctions. "Confirmed, Control. The bandits are experiencing what appears to be complete electronic failure." What Thompson and the others couldn't see was Sarah, invisible in her stealth plane, systematically disabling the enemy jets, one by one. The Ghosthawk's advanced systems could hack into other aircraft's computers and take control of their electronic systems. It was like having a supercomputer in the sky that could turn enemy weapons into useless metal. The enemy formation, now flying blind and unable to communicate, began to retreat. But Sarah wasn't finished with them yet. Her mission included gathering intelligence about these aircraft and finding out which country had sent them into restricted airspace. The Ghosthawk's sensors were recording everything about the enemy jets, from their radio frequencies to the specific types of weapons they carried. "Control, bandits are withdrawing," Thompson reported. "Should we pursue?" "Negative, Eagle Leader. Let them go. We have backup aircraft inbound to escort them out of the area." As the enemy jets retreated, still struggling with their disabled systems, Sarah began to understand the full scope of what she had been given. The Ghosthawk wasn't just a fighter plane. It was a complete information warfare platform capable of neutralizing threats without firing a single shot. The enemy pilots would return to their base with a story no one would believe, claiming that their advanced systems had somehow been defeated by an invisible opponent they never saw. Sarah followed her squadron back toward base, still invisible to their radar. As they flew, she listened to the radio chatter between her fellow pilots, all of whom were trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. "That was the strangest combat encounter I've ever seen," Lieutenant Davis said. "It was like those missiles just decided not to work, and their electronics failing like that," Rodriguez added. "What are the odds of 6 different aircraft having system failures at exactly the same time?" Major Thompson's voice was thoughtful. Something doesn't add up here. Control, do we have any other aircraft in the area? Any experimental or classified platforms that might have been involved in this encounter? Eagle Leader, that information is classified, came the response from air traffic control. Sarah smiled to herself as she listened. Her squadron mates were good pilots and smart people. They knew something unusual had happened, but they would never guess the truth. As far as they were concerned, their squadron had gotten incredibly lucky when the enemy's advanced weapons had mysteriously malfunctioned. When they landed back at the base, the debriefing was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. Intelligence officers were waiting for them, along with several people in civilian clothes who asked very detailed questions about everything they had seen. The pilots were told that the encounter was classified at the highest levels and that they were not to discuss it with anyone outside of official channels. Mitchell, Major Thompson approached her after the debriefing. I have to ask you something. You broke formation during the encounter and then seemed to disappear from our radar. Where did you go? Sarah had prepared for this question. My plane was having some equipment issues, sir. I had to fall back and run diagnostics on my systems. Thompson looked skeptical. Equipment issues. Your flying seemed fine when we landed. The problems cleared up on their own, Sarah replied. You know how these old systems can be. Later that evening, Sarah received a message to report to General Harrison's office immediately. When she arrived, she found the general waiting for her with a satisfied smile on his face. Outstanding work today, Captain, he said as she entered. The Ghosthawk performed exactly as designed. Sir, I have to admit, I had no idea what that plane was really capable of, Sarah replied. When those systems activated, it was like flying a completely different machine. General Harrison nodded. The Ghosthawk has been in development for over 20 years. You're the first pilot qualified to fly it in actual combat conditions. Today's mission was both a field test and a real-world demonstration of what this technology can do. Sarah sat down across from the general's desk. Sir, my squadron mates know something happened out there. They're asking questions. Let them ask, Harrison replied. The official report will show that enemy aircraft experienced equipment failures and withdrew from the area. Your squadron performed admirably in a tense situation. That's the story, and it's the truth, as far as anyone needs to know. The general opened a classified folder and pulled out several photographs. The intelligence we gathered today is invaluable. We now know exactly what type of aircraft that country is using, what weapons they're carrying, and how their systems work. All of that information was collected without them even knowing we were there. Sarah looked at the photos, which showed detailed images of the enemy aircraft taken by the Ghosthawk's advanced sensor. The level of detail was incredible, showing not just the outside of the jets, but also information about their internal systems and capabilities. This is just the beginning, Captain, General Harrison continued. The Ghosthawk project is about to enter a new phase, and you're going to be at the center of it. 3 days after the encounter, Sarah noticed that the attitude toward her plane had begun to change, though in subtle ways. While her fellow pilots still joked about the Ghosthawk's unusual appearance, there was less mockery and more curiosity. Major Thompson had started asking more pointed questions about her plane's abilities, and several of the other pilots had begun watching her takeoffs and landings more carefully. Mitchell, I've been thinking about what happened during that encounter, Lieutenant Davis said as they walked across the tarmac. Your plane disappeared from our radar right when things got interesting. That seems like more than just equipment problems. Sarah kept her expression neutral. Sometimes old electronics act up at the worst times. Maybe, Davis replied, but his tone suggested he wasn't convinced. It's just strange how the timing worked out. The questions became more frequent over the following days. Other pilots began approaching Sarah with observations about her plane that she couldn't easily explain away. They had noticed that the Ghosthawk was completely silent during engine startup, that it seemed to move faster than its design should have allowed, and that it left no visible exhaust trail during flight. Major Thompson finally confronted her directly after a routine training mission. Captain, I've been flying military aircraft for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what your jet can do. I'm not buying the story about old equipment anymore. Sir, I'm not sure what you want me to say, Sarah replied, carefully. I want you to tell me the truth, Thompson said firmly. That plane isn't some leftover from a failed program, is it? It's something completely different. Before Sarah could answer, both of their pagers went off simultaneously. They were being called to an emergency briefing, along with the rest of the squadron. As they hurried toward the briefing room, Sarah wondered if her secret was about to be revealed. The briefing room was packed with personnel Sarah had never seen before. In addition to her squadron mates, there were intelligence officers, high-ranking military officials, and several people in civilian clothes who looked like government agents. General Harrison stood at the front of the room with a serious expression on his face. Ladies and gentlemen, the general began, What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. 3 days ago, this squadron encountered foreign military aircraft in restricted airspace. What you experienced during that encounter was not equipment failure or lucky coincidence. A murmur went through the room as the pilots looked at each other with confusion and growing understanding. General Harrison continued. The enemy aircraft were neutralized by advanced defensive systems operated by the United States Air Force. Specifically, they were defeated by the most advanced military plane ever developed by our country. He pressed a button on his remote control, and a large screen descended from the ceiling. On it appeared a detailed technical drawing of the Ghosthawk, showing its advanced systems and capabilities. This is the X-47 Ghosthawk, a fifth-generation stealth fighter equipped with electronic warfare capabilities beyond anything in our current arsenal. The plane has been in classified development for over 2 decades, and until now, only a handful of people knew it existed. Sarah felt every eye in the room turn toward her as the realization dawned on her squadron mate. She was flying the most advanced military plane in the world, and they had been making jokes about it for weeks. "Captain Mitchell," General Harrison called out, "please stand up." Sarah rose from her chair, feeling the weight of everyone's attention. Major Thompson's expression showed a mixture of amazement and embarrassment as he realized how wrong he had been about her plane. "Captain Mitchell is the first and currently only pilot qualified to operate the Ghosthawk in combat conditions," the general explained. "Her performance during the recent encounter has proven that the plane is ready for active deployment." Lieutenant Rodriguez raised his hand. "Sir, if this plane is so advanced, why did we all think it was some kind of old experimental plane?" General Harrison smiled. "Because that was exactly what we wanted everyone to think. The best way to keep a secret weapon secret is to make sure nobody recognizes it as a weapon." The Ghosthawk's appearance was specifically designed to look like an outdated, failed prototype. The briefing continued for another hour as the general explained the basics of the Ghosthawk program and what it meant for their squadron. Sarah learned that she would be continuing to fly missions with the plane, but now her squadron mates would be aware of its true capabilities and would be trained to work with her during combat operations. "The Ghosthawk gives us a significant advantage over any potential enemy," General Harrison explained. "But that advantage only exists as long as other countries don't know what we have. That's why this information cannot leave this room." After the briefing, Sarah found herself surrounded by her fellow pilots, all of whom wanted to apologize for their treatment of her plane and ask questions about its capabilities. "Mitchell, I feel like such an idiot," Major Thompson said. "I've been trying to get you transferred to a real plane when you were already flying something that makes our jets look like toys. I can't tell you how many times I called your plane a piece of junk," Lieutenant Davis added sheepishly. "Now I find out it's probably worth more than our entire squadron's aircraft combined." Sarah appreciated their apologies, but she was more interested in how this revelation would change their working relationship. "The important thing is that we can work together effectively. The Ghosthawk is powerful, but it's designed to support squadron operations, not replace them." Over the following days, Sarah began training with her squadron mates on how to coordinate with the Ghosthawk during combat missions. They learned that while they couldn't see her plane on radar when its stealth systems were active, she could see and protect them in ways they had never imagined. The dynamic of the entire squadron changed. Instead of being the pilot with the strange plane that nobody understood, Sarah became the squadron's secret weapon. Her fellow pilots began to realize that having her on their team gave them capabilities that no other military unit possessed. "It's incredible," Major Thompson said during one training session. "Knowing that Mitchell is out there, invisible and watching our backs, changes everything about how we can approach missions." But even as her squadron mates began to understand the Ghosthawk's capabilities, Sarah knew that they had only seen a small fraction of what the plane could do. General Harrison had hinted that there were aspects of the program that remained classified, even from her fellow pilot. The real test was coming soon. Intelligence reports indicated that foreign military forces were planning something significant, and Sarah suspected that the Ghosthawk would soon be called upon to demonstrate its full capabilities in a way that would change military aviation forever. 2 weeks after the revelation about the Ghosthawk, Sarah was called to an emergency briefing at 0300 hours. When she arrived at the secure conference room, she found General Harrison along with several high-ranking officials she didn't recognize, including a woman in civilian clothes who introduced herself as Director Patricia Walsh from the National Security Agency. "Captain Mitchell," Director Walsh began, "we have a situation that requires the Ghosthawk's unique capabilities. Satellite intelligence has detected a large-scale military buildup by a hostile nation approximately 800 miles from our coast. They appear to be preparing for some kind of major operation." General Harrison activated the wall display showing satellite images of a heavily fortified island base. "This is Krakow Island. For the past 6 months, enemy forces have been moving advanced military equipment there, including aircraft we've never seen before. 3 days ago, They began what appears to be final preparations for launching an attack. Sarah studied the images carefully. The enemy base was massive, with multiple aircraft carriers, dozens of fighter jets, and what appeared to be advanced missile systems. Sir, what kind of attack are they planning? We believe they intend to strike multiple targets along our coastline simultaneously. Director Walsh replied. Our intelligence suggests they plan to begin their operation within the next 48 hours. Traditional military response would require a large-scale engagement that could escalate into full-scale war. General Harrison leaned forward. That's where the Ghosthawk comes in. We need detailed intelligence about their capabilities, their exact plans, and their weaknesses. You would be flying deep into enemy territory, completely alone to gather information that could prevent a major conflict. Sarah felt the weight of the mission settling on her shoulder. Sir, what about backup? If something goes wrong, there's no way a rescue operation could reach me in time. You're right, the general acknowledged. This would be entirely a solo mission. The Ghosthawk's stealth capabilities would get you in and out without being detected, but if you're discovered, you'd be on your own. Director Walsh opened a classified folder and pulled out detailed mission plans. The operation is voluntary, Captain. We understand the risks we're asking you to take, but the alternative could be a military engagement that costs thousands of lives on both sides. Sarah looked at the satellite images again, studying the enemy base's layout and defenses. What exactly would I need to do once I'm there? Primary objective is intelligence gathering, General Harrison explained. The Ghosthawk's sensors can record detailed information about their aircraft, weapon systems, and operational plan. Secondary objective is to identify any weaknesses in their defenses that our forces could exploit if diplomatic solutions fail. There's also a tertiary objective, Director Walsh added quietly. If the opportunity presents itself, and if it can be done without revealing your presence, disable their command and control systems. The Ghosthawk's electronic warfare capabilities could potentially delay their attack long enough for diplomatic interventions to work. The mission briefing continued for 3 hours as they went over every detail of the operation. Sarah would fly the Ghosthawk across 800 miles of open ocean, penetrate one of the most heavily defended military bases in the world, gather critical intelligence, and return without anyone knowing she had been there. The mission launches in 18 hours, General Harrison concluded. That gives you time to run final systems checks and get some rest. Questions? Sarah had dozens of questions, but the most important one was about the Ghosthawk's capabilities. Sir, will the plane's systems be able to handle a mission of this scope? I'll be operating alone for over 8 hours in hostile territory. The Ghosthawk was designed for exactly this type of operation, the general replied. Extended solo missions in denied territory where conventional forces can't operate. The plane has capabilities you haven't seen yet, Captain. Features that have been waiting for a mission like this. That afternoon, Sarah spent hours in the secure hangar with the Ghosthawk's chief engineer, Dr. Marcus Webb. He showed her systems and capabilities that had remained hidden even during her previous flights. The plane has what we call deep mission mode, Dr. Webb explained. When activated, it becomes completely autonomous for navigation and basic flight operations, allowing you to focus entirely on mission objectives. It can also operate in complete electronic silence, making it invisible to even the most advanced radar system. He led her to a panel she had never seen open before. Inside were controls that looked more like something from a space program than a fighter plane. These are the advanced intelligence gathering systems. While you're flying, the plane will be automatically recording everything it sees and hears. By the time you return, we'll have a complete picture of everything happening on that island. And if something goes wrong? Sarah asked. Dr. Webb's expression became serious. The Ghosthawk has self-defense capabilities that we haven't discussed before. If you're discovered and attacked, the plane can protect itself in ways that no enemy would expect. But Captain, the goal is to never be detected in the first place. That evening, Sarah called her sister in California, something she did regularly. But this time, she found herself struggling to make normal conversation, knowing that she might not be able to call again if the mission went wrong. You sound different tonight, her sister said. Is everything okay? Just tired, Sarah replied. You know how military training can be. Well, make sure you get some rest. And Sarah, be careful out there. Whatever you're doing, if only she knew, Sarah thought as she ended the call. The mission she was about to undertake was unlike anything any pilot had ever attempted. She would be flying alone into the most dangerous airspace in the world, in a plane that officially didn't exist, carrying out a mission that could prevent a war or start one. As she prepared for what might be her final night's sleep, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. 6 weeks ago, she had been the pilot everyone mocked for flying the old piece of junk. Now she was about to attempt the most important mission in the history of military aviation. The next morning would bring the ultimate test of both the Ghosthawk's capabilities and her own skills as a pilot. Success would mean preventing a major conflict and proving that the 20-year investment in advanced military technology had been worthwhile. Failure could mean war, or worse, the loss of the most advanced plane ever built and the secrets it contained. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to rest, knowing that in less than 12 hours, she would be flying alone into the unknown, carrying the hopes and fears of her entire country with her. At 0500 hours, Sarah walked across the dark tarmac toward the Ghosthawk, knowing that the success or failure of her mission could determine the fate of thousands of people. The plane sat silent and waiting, its strange design now familiar and reassuring rather than mysterious and concerning. General Harrison was there to see her off, along with Dr. Webb and a small team of technicians who had spent the night preparing the plane for its most important mission. All systems are green, Dr. Webb reported as Sarah completed her pre-flight inspection. The Ghosthawk is ready for extended deep mission operations. General Harrison approached as Sarah prepared to climb into the cockpit. Captain, I want you to know that this mission is completely voluntary. Even now, you can say no, and there will be no questions asked. Sarah looked at the general, then at the plane that had become so much more than anyone had initially realized. Sir, 6 weeks ago, I thought I was being punished with assignment to an outdated plane. Now I understand that I was chosen for the most important mission of my career. I'm ready. The takeoff was smooth and silent, with the Ghosthawk rising into the pre-dawn darkness, without the roar of engines that normally accompanied military aircraft. As Sarah climbed to cruising altitude, she activated the deep mission systems that Dr. Webb had shown her. Immediately, the plane began operating with a level of autonomy she had never experienced. The flight across 800 miles of ocean took 4 hours, during which the Ghosthawk's advanced systems continuously monitored for threats while maintaining complete stealth. Sarah watched the sunrise from 40,000 feet, knowing that she was approaching what might be the most heavily defended military installation in the world. When Krakow Island appeared on her sensors, Sarah was amazed by what the Ghosthawk's advanced systems revealed. The satellite images had shown a large military base, but the plane's real-time intelligence gathering capabilities painted a much more detailed and concerning picture. The enemy had positioned over 200 aircraft on the island, including advanced fighters that intelligence agencies had never seen before. More troubling were the massive missile installations that appeared designed for long-range strikes against coastal targets. The scale of the operation was far larger than anyone had anticipated. As Sarah circled the island at high altitude, completely invisible to the enemy's radar systems, the Ghosthawk automatically recorded everything. The plane's sensors could see through camouflage netting, identify specific weapon types, and even intercept radio communications from the ground. This is incredible, Sarah whispered to herself as the data flowed across her displays. The enemy wasn't just planning a single attack. They were preparing for a sustained military campaign that could last for months. But something else caught her attention on the sensors. In the center of the island was a facility that didn't match the military installations surrounding it. The structure was heavily shielded and appeared to be some kind of advanced research laboratory. The Ghosthawk's sensors indicated unusual energy signatures coming from the building. Sarah made the decision to investigate closer. She descended to 15,000 feet and activated the plane's most advanced reconnaissance systems. What she discovered changed everything about the mission. The facility wasn't just a research lab. It was a manufacturing plant for advanced military technology, including aircraft that were copies of classified American designs. Somehow, the enemy had obtained detailed plans for several top-secret military projects and were producing their own version. Command, this is Ghosthawk. Sarah transmitted on the secure emergency frequency. I've discovered a major security breach. The enemy has copies of our classified aircraft designs and is manufacturing them. The response came immediately from General Harris. Ghosthawk, confirm your transmission. Did you say they have our designs? Confirmed, Command. I'm looking at aircraft that appear to be based on the F-35 program, but with modifications we've never seen. They also have what looks like an attempt to recreate stealth technology similar to the Ghosthawk. There was a long pause before the general responded. Ghosthawk, new mission parameters. If possible, disable their manufacturing capability without revealing your presence. Sarah studied her options. The Ghosthawk's electronic warfare systems were powerful enough to disrupt the facility's operations, but doing so would require getting much closer to the target. She would have to fly directly over the most heavily defended part of the island. Understood, Command. Beginning electronic warfare operations, Sarah descended to 8,000 feet and activated systems she had never used before. The Ghosthawk began transmitting targeted electronic pulses that interfered with the manufacturing equipment below. Within minutes, she could see through her sensors that the facility's operations were shutting down as their computer systems failed. But the electronic warfare operations had an unexpected consequence. While the Ghosthawk remained invisible to radar, the enemy's security systems detected the electronic interference